Pythagorean mathematics. Concerning the secret significance of numbers, there has been much speculation. Though many interesting discoveries have been made, it may be safely said that with the death of Pythagoras, the great key to this science was lost. For nearly 2,500 years, philosophers of all nations have attempted to unravel the Pythagorean skein, but apparently none has been successful. Notwithstanding attempts made to obliterate all records of the teachings of Pythagoras, fragments have survived which give clues to some of the simpler parts of his philosophy. The major secrets were never committed to writing, but were communicated orally to a few chosen disciples. These apparently dated not divulge their secrets to the profane, the result being that when death sealed their lips, the arcana died with diem. Certain of the secret schools in the world today are perpetuations of the ancient mysteries, and although it is quite possible that they may possess some of the original numerical formulae, there is no evidence of it in the voluminous writings which have issued from these groups during the last 500 years. These writings, while frequently discussing Pythagoras, show no indication of a more complete knowledge of his intricate doctrines than the post-Pythagorean Greek speculators had, who talked much, wrote little, knew less, and concealed their ignorance under a series of mysterious hints and promises. Here and there among the literary products of early writers are found enigmatic statements which they made no effort to interpret. The following example is quoted from Plutarch. The Pythagoreans indeed go farther than this, and honor even numbers and geometrical diagrams with the names and titles of the gods. Thus they call the equilateral triangle head-born Minerva and Tritogenia, because it may be equally divided by 3 perpendiculars drawn from each of the angles. So the unit they term Apollo. As to the number 2, they have affixed the name of strife and audaciousness, and to that of 3, justice. 4. As doing an injury is an extreme on the one side, and suffering one is an extreme on the one side, and suffering in the middle between them. In like manner, the number 36, their tetractys, or sacred quaternion, being composed of the first 4 odd numbers added to the first 4 even ones, as is commonly reported, is looked upon by them as the most solemn oath they can take, and called Cosmos, Isis, and Osiris. Earlier in the same work, Plutarch also notes, "For as the power of the triangle is expressive of the nature of Pluto, Bacchus, and Mars, and the properties of the square of Rhea, Venus, Ceres, Vesta, and Juno, of the dodecahedron of Jupiter, so, as we are informed by Eudoxus, is the figure of 56 angles expressive of the nature of Typhon." Plutarch did not pretend to explain the inner significance of the symbols, but believed that the relationship which Pythagoras established between the geometrical solids and the gods was the result of images the great sage had seen in the Egyptian temples. Pythagorean mathematics. Albert Pike, the great Masonic symbolist, admitted that there were many points concerning which he could secure no reliable information. In his symbolism, for the 32 degrees and 33 degree, he wrote, "I do not understand why the 7 should be called Minerva or the cube Neptune." Further on, he added, "Undoubtedly, the names given by the Pythagoreans to the different numbers were themselves enigmatical and symbolic, and there is little doubt that in the time of Plutarch, the meanings these names concealed were lost. Pythagoras had succeeded too well in concealing his symbols with a veil that was from the first impenetrable, without his oral explanation. This uncertainty, shared by all true students of the subject, proves conclusively that it is unwise to make definite statements founded on the indefinite and fragmentary information available concerning the Pythagorean system of mathematical philosophy. The material which follows represents an effort to collect a few salient points from the scattered records preserved by disciples of Pythagoras and others who have since contacted his philosophy. Method of securing the numerical power of words. The first step in obtaining the numerical value of a word is to resolve it back into its original tongue. Only words of Greek or Hebrew derivation can be successfully analyzed by this method, and all words must be spelled in their most ancient and complete forms. Old Testament words and names, therefore, must be translated back into the early Hebrew characters, and New Testament words into the Greek. 2 examples will help to clarify this principle. The demiurgus of the Jews is called in English Jehovah, But when seeking the numerical value of the name Jehovah, it is necessary to resolve the name into its Hebrew letters. It becomes Hoi and is read from right to left. The Hebrew letters are Ha, Hau, Vau, Ha, He, Yod, and when reversed into the English order from left to right read Yod, He, Vau, He. By consulting the foregoing table of letter values, it is found that the 4 characters of this sacred name have the following numerical significance. Yod equals 10, He equals 5, Vau equals 6, and the second He equals 5. Therefore, 10 plus 5 plus 6 plus 26, a synonym of Jehovah. If the English letters were used, the answer obviously would not be correct. The second example is the mysterious Gnostic pantheos Abraxas. For this name, the Greek table is used. Abraxas in Greek is avraxas. I equals 1, B equals 2, Re equals 100, Ava equals 1, Kex equals 60, Ava equals 1, Ses equals 200, the sum being 365, the number of days in the year. This number furnishes the key to the mystery of Abraxas, who is symbolic of the 365 aeons, or spirits of the days, gathered together in one composite personality. Abraxas is symbolic of 5 creatures, and as the circle of the year actually consists of 360 degrees, each of the emanating deities is 1/5 of this power, or 72, one of the most sacred numbers in the Old Testament of the Jews and in their Kabbalistic system. This same method is used in finding the numerical value of the names of the gods and goddesses of the Greeks and Jews. All higher numbers can be reduced to one of the original 10 numerals, and the 10 itself to 1. Therefore, all groups of numbers resulting from the translation of names of deities into their numerical equivalents have a basis in one of the first 10 numbers. By this system, in which the digits are added together, 666 becomes 6 plus 6 plus 6, or 18, and this in turn becomes 1 plus 8, or 9. According to Revelation, 144,000 are to be saved. This number becomes 1 plus 4 plus 0, 0 plus 0, which equals 9, thus proving that both the beast of Babylon and the number of the saved refer to man himself, whose symbol is the number 9. This system can be used successfully with both Greek and Hebrew letter values. The original Pythagorean system of numerical philosophy contains nothing to justify the practice now in vogue of changing the given name or surname in the hope of improving the temperament or financial condition by altering the name vibrations. There is also a system of calculation in vogue for the English language, but its accuracy is a matter of legitimate dispute. It is comparatively modern and has no relationship either to the Hebrew Kabbalistic system or to the Greek procedure. The claim made by some that it is Pythagorean is not supported by any tangible evidence, and there are many reasons why such a contention is untenable. The fact that Pythagoras used 10 as the basis of calculation, while this system uses 9, an imperfect number, is in itself almost conclusive. Furthermore, the arrangement of the Greek and Hebrew letters does not agree closely enough with the English to permit the application of the number sequences of one language to the number sequences of the others. Further experimentation with the system may prove profitable, but it is without basis in antiquity. The arrangement of the letters and numbers is as follows: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A, B, C, E, F, G, I, J, K, L, M, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. The letters under each of the numbers have the value of the figure at the top of the column. Thus, in the word man, M equals 4, A equals 1, N equals 5, a total of 10. The values of the numbers are practically the same as those given by the Pythagorean system. An introduction to the Pythagorean theory of numbers. The following outline of Pythagorean mathematics is a paraphrase of the opening chapters of Thomas Taylor's Theoretic Arithmetic, the rarest and most important compilation of Pythagorean mathematical fragments extant. The Pythagoreans declared arithmetic to be the mother of the mathematical sciences. This is proved by the fact that geometry, music, and astronomy are dependent upon it, but it is not dependent upon them. Thus, geometry may be removed, but arithmetic will remain. But if arithmetic be removed, geometry is eliminated. In the same manner, music depends upon arithmetic, but the elimination of music affects arithmetic only by limiting one of its expressions. The Pythagoreans also demonstrated arithmetic to be prior to astronomy, for the latter is dependent upon both geometry and music. The size, form, and motion of the celestial bodies is determined by the use of geometry. their harmony and rhythm by the use of music. If astronomy be removed, neither geometry nor music is injured, but if geometry and music be eliminated, astronomy is destroyed. The priority of both geometry and music to astronomy is therefore established. Arithmetic, however, is prior to all. It is primary and fundamental. Pythagoras instructed his disciples that the science of mathematics is divided into two major parts. The first is concerned with the multitude, or the constituent parts of a thing, and the second with the magnitude, or the relative size or density of a thing. Magnitude is divided into two parts, magnitude which is stationary and magnitude which is movable, the stationary pair having priority. Multitude is also divided into two parts, for it is related both to itself and to other things, the first relationship having priority. Pythagoras assigned the science of arithmetic to multitude related to itself, and the art of music to multitude related to other things. Geometry likewise was assigned to stationary magnitude, and spherics, used partly in the sense of astronomy, to movable magnitude. Both multitude and magnitude were circumscribed by the circumference of mind. The atomic theory has proved size to be the result of number, for a mass is made up of minute units, though mistaken by the uninformed for a single simple substance. Owing to the fragmentary condition of existing Pythagorean records, it is difficult to arrive at exact definitions of terms. Before it is possible, however, to unfold the subject further, some light must he cast upon the meanings of the words number, monad, and one. The monad signifies A, the all-including one. The Pythagoreans called the monad the noble number, sire of gods and men. The monad also signifies B, the sum of any combination of numbers considered as a whole. Thus, the universe is considered as a monad, but the individual parts of the universe, such as the planets and elements, are monads in relation to the parts of which they themselves are composed, though they, in turn, are parts of the greater monad formed of their sum. The monad may also be likened, C, to the seed of a tree, which, when it has grown, has many branches, the numbers. In other words, the numbers are to the monad what the branches of the tree are to the seed of the tree. From the study of the mysterious Pythagorean monad, Leibniz evolved his magnificent theory of the world atoms, a theory in perfect accord with the ancient teachings of the mysteries, for Leibniz himself was an initiate of a secret school. By some Pythagoreans, the monad is also considered D, synonymous with the one. Number is the term applied to all numerals and their combinations. A strict interpretation of the term number by certain of the Pythagoreans excludes 1 and 2. Pythagoras defines number to be the extension and energy of the spermatic reasons contained in the monad. The followers of Hippasus declared number to be the first pattern used by the demiurgus in the formation of the universe. The one was defined by the Platonists as the summit of the many. The one differs from the monad in that the term monad is used to designate the sum of the parts considered as a unit, whereas the one is the term applied to each of its integral parts. There are two orders of number, odd and even. Because unity, or one, always remains indivisible, the odd number cannot be divided equally. Thus, 9 is 4 plus 1 plus 4, the unity in the center being indivisible. Furthermore, if any odd number be divided into two parts, one part will always be odd and the other even. Thus, 9 may be 5 plus 4, 3 plus 6, 7 plus 2, or 8 plus 1. The Pythagoreans considered the odd number, of which the monad was the prototype, to be definite and masculine. They were not all agreed, however, as to the nature of unity, or one. Some declared it to be positive because if added to an even, negative number, it produces an odd, positive number. Others demonstrated that if unity be added to an odd number, the latter becomes even, thereby making the masculine to be feminine. Unity, or one, therefore, was considered an androgynous number, partaking of both the masculine and the feminine attributes, consequently both odd and even. For this reason, the Pythagoreans called it evenly odd. It was customary for the Pythagoreans to offer sacrifices of an uneven number of objects to the superior gods, while to the goddesses and subterranean spirits an even number was offered. Any even number may be divided into two equal parts, which are always either both odd or both even. Thus, 10 by equal division gives 5 plus 5, both odd numbers. The same principle holds true if the 10 be unequally divided. For example, in 6 plus 4, both parts are even, In 7 plus 3, both parts are odd. In 8 plus 2, both parts are again even, and in 9 plus 1, both parts are again odd. Thus, in the even number, however it may be divided, the parts will always be both odd or both even. The Pythagoreans considered the even number, of which the duad was the prototype, to be indefinite and feminine. The odd numbers are divided by a mathematical contrivance, called the sieve of Eratosthenes, into 3 general classes: incomposite, composite, and incomposite, composite. The incomposite numbers are those which have no divisor other than themselves and unity, such as 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23, 29, 31, 37, 41, 43, 47, and so forth. For example, 7 is divisible only by 7, which goes into itself once, and unity, which goes into 7 times. The composite numbers are those which are divisible not only by themselves in unity, but also by some other number, such as 9, 15, 21, 25, 27, 33, 39, 45, 51, 57, and so forth. For example, 21 is divisible not only by itself and by unity, but also by 3 and by 7. The incomposite composite numbers are those which have no common divisor, although each of itself is capable of division, such as 9 and 25. For example, 9 is divisible by 3 and 25 by 5, but neither is divisible by the divisor of the other. Thus, they have no common divisor. Because they have individual divisors, they are called composite. And because they have no common divisor, they are called composite. Accordingly, the term incomposite composite was created to describe their properties. Even numbers are divided into 3 classes: evenly even, evenly odd, and oddly odd. The evenly even numbers are all in duple ratio from unity. Thus, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 2 and 56, 5, 12, and 1 then 24. The proof of the perfect evenly even number is that it can be halved and the halves again halved back to unity, as 1/2 of 64 equals 32, 1/2 of 32, 16, 1/2 of 16 equals 8, 1/2 of 8 equals 4, 1/2 of 4 equals 2, 1/2 of 2 equals 1. Beyond unity, it is impossible to go. The evenly even numbers possess certain unique properties. The sum of any number of terms, but the last term is always equal to the last term minus 1. For example, the sum of the first and second terms, 1 plus 2, equals the third term, 4 minus 1, or the sum of the first, second, third, and fourth terms, 1 plus 2 plus 4 plus 8, equals the fifth term, 16, minus 1. In a series of evenly even numbers, the first multiplied by the last equals the last, the second multiplied by the second from the last equals the last, and so on until in an odd series one number remains, which multiplied by itself equals the last number of the series. Or, in an even series, 2 numbers remain, which multiplied by each other give the last number of the series. For example, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16 is an odd series. The first number, 1, multiplied by the last number, 16, equals the last number, 16. The second number, 2, multiplied by the second from the last number, 8, equals the last number, 16. Being an odd series, the 4 is left in the center, and this multiplied by itself also equals the last number, 16. The evenly odd numbers are those which, when halved, are incapable of further division by halving. They are formed by taking the odd numbers in sequential order and multiplying them by 2. By this process, the odd numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11 produce the evenly odd numbers 2, 6, 10, 14, 18, 22. Thus, every fourth number is evenly odd. Each of the even-odd numbers may be divided once, as 2, which becomes 2 ones and cannot be divided further, or 6, which becomes 2 threes and cannot be divided further. Another peculiarity of the evenly odd numbers is that if the divisor be odd, the quotient is always even, and if the divisor be even, the quotient is always odd. For example, if 18 be divided by 2, an even divisor, the quotient is 9, an odd number. If 18 be divided by 3, an odd divisor, the quotient is 6, an even number. The evenly odd numbers are also remarkable in that each term is 1/2 of the sum of the terms on either side of it. For example, 10 is 1/2 of the sum of 6 and 14, 18 is 1/2 the sum of 14 and 22, and 6 is 1/2 the sum of 2 and 10. The oddly odd, or unevenly even numbers are a compromise between the evenly even and the evenly odd numbers. Unlike the evenly even, they cannot be halved back to unity. And unlike the evenly odd, they are capable of more than one division by halving. The oddly odd numbers are formed by multiplying the evenly even numbers above 2 by the odd numbers above 1. The odd numbers above 1 are 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and so forth. The evenly even numbers above 2 are 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, and so on. The first odd number of the series, 3, multiplied by 4, the first evenly even number of the series, gives 12, the first oddly odd number. By multiplying 5, 7, 9, 11, and so forth, by 4, oddly odd numbers are found. The other oddly odd numbers are produced by multiplying 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and so forth, in turn, by the other evenly even numbers, 8, 16, 32, 64, and so forth. An example of the halving of the oddly odd number is as follows. 1/2 of 12 equals 6. 1/2 of 6 equals 3, which cannot be halved further because the Pythagoreans did not divide unity. Even numbers are also divided into 3 other classes: superperfect, deficient, and perfect. Superperfect or superabundant numbers are such as have the sum of their fractional parts greater than themselves. For example, 1/2 of 24 equals 12, 1/4 6, 1/3 8, 1/6 4, 1/12 2, and 1/24 equal 1. The sum of these parts, 12 plus 6 plus 8 plus 4 plus 2 plus 1, is 33, which is in excess of 24, the original number. Deficient numbers are such as have the sum of their fractional parts less than themselves. For example, 1/2 of 14 equals 7, 1/7 equals 2, and 1/14 1. The sum of these parts, 7 plus 2 plus 1, is 10, which is less than 14, the original number. Perfect numbers are such as have the sum of their fractional parts equal to themselves. For example, 1/2 of 28, 14, 1/7, 1/7 equals 4, 14 is 2, and 1/28 equals 1. The sum of these parts, 47 plus 4 plus 2 plus 1, is equal to 28. The perfect numbers are extremely rare. There is only one between 1 and 10, namely 6, one between 10 and 100, namely 28, one between 100 and 1,000, namely 496, and one between 1,000 and 10,000, namely 8,128. The perfect numbers are found by the following rule. The first number of the evenly even series of numbers, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and so forth, is added to the second number of the series, and if an incomposite number results, it is multiplied by the last number of the series of evenly even numbers whose sum produced it. The product is the first perfect number. For example, the first and second evenly even numbers are 1 and 2. Their sum is 3, an incomposite number. If 3 be multiplied by 2, the last number of the series of evenly even numbers used to produce it, the product is 6, the first perfect number. If the addition of the evenly even numbers does not result in an incomposite number, the next evenly even number of the series must be added until an incomposite number results. The second perfect number is found in the following manner. The sum of the evenly even numbers 1, 2, and 4 is 7, an incomposite number. If 7 be multiplied by 4, the last of the series of evenly even numbers used to produce it, the product is 28, the second perfect number. This method of calculation may be continued to infinity. Perfect numbers, when multiplied by 2, produce superabundant numbers, and when divided by 2, produce deficient numbers. The Pythagoreans evolved their philosophy from the science of numbers. The following quotation from Theoretic Arithmetic is an excellent example of this practice. Perfect numbers, therefore, are beautiful images of the virtues which are certain media between excess and defect, and are not summits, as by some of the ancients they were supposed to be. And evil indeed is opposed to evil, but both are opposed to one good. Good, however, is never opposed to good, but to two evils at one and the same time. Thus timidity is opposed to audacity, to both of which the want of true courage is common, but both timidity and audacity are opposed to fortitude. Craft also is opposed to fatuity, to both which the want of intellect is common, and both these are opposed to prudence. Thus, too, profusion is opposed to avarice, to both of which illiberality is common, and both these are opposed to liberality. And in a similar manner in the other virtues, by all of which it is evident that perfect numbers have a great similitude to the virtues. But they also resemble the virtues on another account, for they are rarely found as being few, and they are generated in a very constant order. On the contrary, an infinite multitude of superabundant and diminished numbers may be found, nor are they disposed in any orderly series, nor generated from any certain end, and hence they have a great similitude to the vices, which are numerous, inordinate, and indefinite. The table of the 10 numbers. The following outline of the Pythagorean numbers is a paraphrase of the writings of Nicomachus, Theon of Smyrna, Proclus, Porphyry, Plutarch, Clement of Alexandria, Aristotle, and other early authorities. Monad 1 is so called because it remains always in the same condition, that is, separate from multitude. Its attributes are as follows. It is called mind because the mind is stable and has preeminence, hermaphrodism because it is both male and female, odd and even, for being added to the even it makes odd, and to the odd even, God because it is the beginning and end of all, but itself has neither beginning nor end, good, for such is the nature of God, the receptacle of matter, because it produces the duad, which is essentially material. By the Pythagoreans, monad was called chaos, obscurity, chasm, Tartarus, Styx, abyss, Lethe, Atlas, axis, morpho, a name for Venus, and tower or throne of Jupiter, because of the great power which abides in the center of the universe and controls the circular motion of the planars about itself. Monad is also called germinal reason, because it is the origin of all the thoughts in the universe. Other names given to it were Apollo, because of its relation to the sun, Prometheus, because he brought man light, Paralios, one who exists in fire, Geniture, because without it no number can exist, Substance, because substance is primary, Cause of truth, and Constitution of symphony, all these because it is the primordial one. Between greater and lesser the monad is equal, between intention and remission it is middle, in multitude it is mean, and in time it is now, because eternity knows neither past nor future. It is called Jupiter, because he is father and head of the gods, Vesta, the fire of the home, because it is located in the midst of the universe and remains there inclining to no side as a dot in a circle, Form, because it circumscribes, comprehends, and terminates, Love, concord, and piety, because it is indivisible. Other symbolic names for the monad are ship, chariot, Proteus, a god capable of changing his form, Mnemosyne, and Polyonymous, having many names. The following symbolic names were given to the duad, two, because it has been divided and is two rather than one, and when there are two, each is opposed to the other. Genius, evil, darkness, inequality, instability, movability, boldness, fortitude, contention, matter, dissimilarity, partition between multitude and monad, defect, shapelessness, indefiniteness, indeterminateness, harmony, tolerance, root, feet of fountain abounding idea, top, phanes, opinion, fallacy, alterity, diffidence, impulse, death, motion, generation, mutation, division, longitude, augmentation, composition, communion, misfortune, sustentation, imposition, marriage, soul, and science. In his book Numbers, W. Wynne Westcott says of the duad, it was called audacity, from its being the earliest number to separate itself from the divine one, from the adytum of God-nourished silence, as the Chaldean oracles say. As the monad is the father, so the duad is the mother. Therefore, the duad has certain points in common with the goddesses Isis, Rhea, Jove's mother, Phrygia, Dindymene, Cybele, and Ceres, Erato, one of the muses, Diana, because the moon is forked, Dictina, Venus, Dione, Cytherea, Juno, because she is both wife and sister of Jupiter, and Maia, the mother of Mercury. While the monad is the symbol of wisdom, the duad is the symbol of ignorance, for in it exists the sense of separateness, which sense is the beginning of ignorance. The duad, however, is also the mother of wisdom, for ignorance, out of the nature of itself, invariably gives birth to wisdom. The Pythagoreans revered the monad, but despised the duad, because it was the symbol of polarity. By the power of the duad, the deep was created in contradistinction to the heavens. The deep mirrored the heavens and became the symbol of illusion, for the below was merely a reflection of the above. The below was called Maya, the illusion, the sea, the great void, and to symbolize it, the Magi of Persia carried mirrors. From the duad arose disputes and contentions, until by bringing the monad between the duad, equilibrium was re-established by the Savior God, who took upon himself the form of a number and was crucified between two thieves for the sins of men. The triad 3 is the first number actually odd, monad not always being considered a number. It is the first equilibrium of unities. Therefore, Pythagoras said that Apollo gave oracles from a tripod and advised offer of libation 3 times. The keywords to the qualities of the triad are friendship, peace, justice, prudence, piety, temperance, and virtue. The following deities partake of the principles of the triad: Saturn, ruler of time; Latona, cornucopia; Ophion, the great serpent; Thetis, Hecate, polyhymnia; a muse; Pluto, Triton, president of the sea; Tritogenia, Achelous, and the faces, furies, and graces. This number is called wisdom because men organize the present, foresee the future, and benefit by the experiences of the past. It is cause of wisdom and understanding. The triad is the number of knowledge, music, geometry, and astronomy, and the science of the celestials and terrestrials. Pythagoras taught that the cube of this number had the power of the lunar circle. The sacredness of the triad and its symbol, the triangle, is derived from the fact that it is made up of the monad and the duad. The monad is the symbol of the Divine Father and the duad of the Great Mother. The triad, being made of these two, is therefore androgynous and is symbolic of the fact that God gave birth to his worlds out of himself, who in his creative aspect is always symbolized by the triangle. The monad passing into the duad was thus capable of becoming the parent of progeny, for the duad was the womb of Meru, within which the world was incubated, and within which it still exists in embryo. The tetraphore was esteemed by the Pythagoreans as the primogenial number, the root of all things, the fountain of nature, and the most perfect number. All tetrads are intellectual. They have an emergent order and encircle the world as the imperium passes through it. Why the Pythagoreans expressed God as a tetrad is explained in a sacred discourse ascribed to Pythagoras, wherein God is called the number of numbers. This is because the decad, or 10, is composed of 1, 2, 3, and 4. The number 4 is symbolic of God because it is symbolic of the first 4 numbers. Moreover, the tetrad is the center of the week, being halfway between 1 and 7. The tetrad is also the first geometric solid. Pythagoras maintained that the soul of man consists of a tetrad, the 4 powers of the soul being mind, science, opinion, and sense. The tetrad connects all beings, elements, numbers, and seasons, nor can anything be named which does not depend upon the tetractys. It is the cause and maker of all things, the intelligible God, author of celestial and sensible good. Plutarch interprets this tetractys, which he said was also called the world, to be 36, consisting of the first 4 odd numbers added to the first 4 even numbers. Thus, 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus 7, 16. 2 plus 4, 6, 8 equals 20, 36. Keywords given to the tetrad are impetuity, strength, virility, two-mothered, and the key keeper of nature, because the universal constitution cannot be without it. It is also called harmony and the first profundity. The following deities partook of the nature of the tetrad: Hercules, Mercury, Vulcan, Bacchus, and Urania, one of the Muses. The triad represents the primary colors and the major planets, while the tetrad represents the secondary colors and the minor planets. From the first triangle come forth the 7 spirits, symbolized by a triangle and a square. These together form the Masonic apron. The pentad 5 is the union of an odd and an even number, 3 and 2. Among the Greeks, the pentagram was a sacred symbol of light, health, and vitality. It also symbolized the 5th element, ether, because it is free from the disturbances of the 4 lower elements. It is called equilibrium because it divides the perfect number 10 into 2 equal parts. The pentad is symbolic of nature, for when multiplied by itself it returns into itself, just as grains of wheat, starting in the form of seed, pass through nature's processes and reproduce the seed of the wheat as the ultimate form of their own growth. Other numbers, multiplied by themselves, produce other numbers, but only 5 and 6, multiplied by themselves, represent and retain their original number as the last figure in their products. The pentad represents all the superior and inferior beings. It is sometimes referred to as the Hierophant or the priest of the mysteries because of its connection with the spiritual ethers by means of which mystic development is attained. Key words of the pentad are reconciliation, alternation, marriage, immortality, cordiality, providence, and sound. Among the deities who partook of the nature of the pentad were Pallas, Nemesis, Bubastia, Bast, Venus, Androgynia, Cytherea, and the messengers of Jupiter. The tetrad, the elements, plus the monad equals the pentad. The Pythagoreans taught that the elements of earth, fire, air, and water were permeated by a substance called ether. the basis of vitality and life. Therefore, they chose the five-pointed star, or pentagram, as the symbol of vitality, health, and interpenetration. It was customary for the philosophers to conceal the element of earth under the symbol of a dragon, and many of the heroes of antiquity were told to go forth and slay the dragon. Hence, they drove their sword, the monad, into the body of the dragon, the tetrad. This resulted in the formation of the pentad, a symbol of the victory of the spiritual nature over the material nature. The four elements are symbolized in the early biblical writings as the four rivers that poured out of Garden of Eden. The elements themselves are under the control of the composite cherubim of Ezekiel. The Pythagoreans held the hexad, 6, to represent, as Clement of Alexandria conceived, the creation of the world according to both the prophets and the ancient mysteries. It was called by the Pythagoreans the perfection of all the parts. This number was particularly sacred to Orpheus, and also to the Fate, Lachesis, and the Muse, Thalia. It was called the form of forms, the articulation of the universe, and the maker of the soul. Among the Greeks, harmony and the soul were considered to be similar in nature because all souls are harmonic. The hexad is also the symbol of marriage because it is formed by the union of two triangles, one masculine and the other feminine. Among the keywords given to the hexad are time, for it is the measure of duration, panacea because health is equilibrium, and the hexad is a balance number. The world, because the world, like the hexad, is often seen to consist of contraries by harmony. Omnisufficient, because its parts are sufficient for totality, 3 + 2 + 1 = 6. Unwearied, because it contains the elements of immortality. By the Pythagoreans, the heptad, 7, was called worthy of veneration. It was held to be the number of religion, because man is controlled by 7 celestial spirits, to whom it is proper for him to make offerings. It was called the number of life, because it was believed that human creatures born in the 7th month of embryonic life usually lived, but those born in the 8th month often died. One author called it the motherless virgin, Minerva, because it was nor born of a mother, but out of the crown, or the head of the father, the monad. Keywords of the heptad are fortune, occasion, custody, control, government, judgment, dreams, voices, sounds, and that which leads all things to their end. Deities whose attributes were expressed by the heptad were Aegis, Osiris, Mars, and Clio, one of the muses. Among many ancient nations, the heptad is a sacred number. The Elohim of the Jews were supposedly 7 in number. They were the spirits of the dawn, more commonly known as the archangels controlling the planets. The 7 archangels, with the 3 spirits controlling the sun in its threefold aspect, constitute the 10, the sacred Pythagorean decad. The mysterious Pythagorean tetractys, or 4 rows of dots, increasing from 1 to 4, was symbolic of the stages of creation. The great Pythagorean truth that all things in nature are regenerated through the decad, or 10, is subtly preserved in Freemasonry through these grips being affected by the uniting of 10 fingers, 5 on the hand of each person. The 3, spirit, mind, and soul, descend into the 4, the world, the sum being the 7, or the mystic nature of man, consisting of a threefold spiritual body and a fourfold material form. These are symbolized by the cube, which has 6 surfaces and a mysterious 7th point within. The 6 surfaces are the directions: north, east, south, west, up and down, or front, back, right, left, above and below, or again, earth, fire, air, water, spirit, and matter. In the midst of these stands the One, which is the upright figure of man, from whose center in the cube radiate 6 pyramids. From this comes the great occult axiom: the center is the father of the directions, the dimensions, and the distances. The heptad is the number of the law because it is the number of the makers of cosmic law, the 7 spirits before the throne. The Ogdod, 8, was sacred because it was the number of the first cube, which form had 8 corners, and was the only evenly even number under 10, 1, 2, 4, 8, 4, 2, 1. Thus, the 8 is divided into 2 4s, each 4 is divided into 2 2s, and each 2 is divided into 2 1s, thereby re-establishing the monad. Among the keywords of the Ogdod are love, counsel, prudence, law, and convenience. Among the divinities partaking of its nature were Panharmonia, Rhea, Cybele, Cadmea, Dindymene, Ortia, Neptune, Themis, and Euterpe, a muse. The Ogdod was a mysterious number associated with the Eleusinian mysteries of Greece and the Cabric. It was called the Little Holy Number. It derived its form partly from the twisted snakes on the caduceus of Hermes and partly from the serpentine motion of the celestial bodies, possibly also from the moon's nodes. The Ennead, 9, was the first square of an odd number, 3 by 3. It was associated with failure and shortcoming because it fell short of the perfect number 10 by 1. It was called the number of man because of the 9 months of his embryonic life. Among its keywords are ocean and horizon, because to the ancients these were boundless. The Ennead is the limitless number because there is nothing beyond it but the infinite 10. It was called boundary and limitation because it gathered all numbers within itself. It was called the sphere of the air because it surrounded the numbers as air surrounds the earth. Among the gods and goddesses who partook in greater or less degree of its nature were Prometheus, Vulcan, Juno, the sister and wife of Jupiter, Pan and Aglaia, Tritogenia, Curetes, Proserpine, Hyperion, and Terpsichore, a muse. The 9 was looked upon as evil because it was an inverted 6. According to the Eleusinian mysteries, it was the number of the spheres through which the consciousness passed on its way to birth. Because of its close resemblance to the spermatozoon, the 9 has been associated with germinal life. The decad 10, according to the Pythagoreans, is the greatest of numbers, not only because it is the tetractys, the 10 dots, but because it comprehends all arithmetic and harmonic proportions. Pythagoras said that 10 is the nature of number, because all nations reckon to it, and when they arrive at it, they return to the monad. The decad was called both heaven and the world, because the former includes the latter. Being a perfect number, the decad was applied by the Pythagoreans to those things relating to age, power, faith, necessity, and the power of memory. It was also called unwearied, because, like God, it was tireless. The Pythagoreans divided the heavenly bodies into 10 orders. They also stated that the decad perfected all numbers and comprehended within itself the nature of odd and even, moved and unmoved, good and ill. They associated its power with the following deities: Atlas, for it carried the numbers on its shoulders; Urania, Mnemosyne, the sun, Phanes, and the one god. The decimal system can probably be traced back to the time when it was customary to reckon on the fingers, these being among the most primitive of calculating devices and still in use among many Aboriginal peoples. The human body in symbolism. The oldest, the most profound, the most universal of all symbols is the human body. The Greeks, Persians, Egyptians, and Hindus considered a philosophical analysis of man's triune nature to be an indispensable part of ethical and religious training. The mysteries of every nation taught that the laws, elements, and powers of the universe were epitomized in the human constitution, that everything which existed outside of man had its analog within man. The universe, being immeasurable in its immensity and inconceivable in its profundity, was beyond mortal estimation. Even the gods themselves could comprehend but a part of the inaccessible glory which was their source. When temporarily permeated with divine enthusiasm, man may transcend for a brief moment the limitations of his own personality and behold in part that celestial effulgence in which all creation is bathed. But even in his periods of greatest illumination, man is incapable of imprinting upon the substance of his rational soul a perfect image of the multiform expression of celestial activity. Recognizing the futility of attempting to cope intellectually with that which transcends the comprehension of the rational faculties, the early philosophers turned their attention from the inconceivable divinity to man himself, within the narrow confines of whose nature they found manifested all the mysteries of the external spheres. As the natural outgrowth of this practice, there was fabricated a secret theological system in which God was considered as the grand man and, conversely, man as the little god. Continuing this analogy, the universe was regarded as a man, and conversely, man as a miniature universe. The greater universe was termed the macrocosm, the great world or body, and the divine life or spiritual entity controlling its functions was called the macroprosophis. Man's body, or the individual human universe, was termed the microcosm, and the divine life or spiritual entity controlling its functions was called the microprosophis. The pagan mysteries were primarily concerned with instructing neophytes in the true relationship existing between the macrocosm and the microcosm. In other words, between God and man. Accordingly, the key to these analogies between the organs and functions of the microcosmic man and those of the macrocosmic man constituted the most prized possession of the early initiates. In Isis Unveiled, H.P. Blavatsky summarizes the pagan concept of man as follows. Man is a little world, a microcosm inside the great universe. Like a fetus, he is suspended by all his three spirits in the matrix of the macrocosmos, and while his terrestrial body is in constant sympathy with its parent Earth, his astral soul lives in unison with the sidereal anima mundi. He is in it, as it is in him, for the world-pervading element fills all space, and is space itself, only shoreless and infinite. As to his third spirit, the divine, what is it but an infinitesimal ray, one of the countless radiations proceeding directly from the highest cause, the spiritual light of the world? This is the trinity of organic and inorganic nature, the spiritual and the physical, which are three in one, and of which Proclus says that the first monad is the eternal God, the second, eternity, the third, the paradigm or pattern of the universe, the three constituting the intelligible triad. Long before the introduction of idolatry into religion, the early priests caused the statue of a man to be placed in the sanctuary of the temple. This human figure symbolized the divine power in all its intricate manifestations. Thus, the priests of antiquity accepted man as their textbook, and through the study of him, learned to understand the greater and more abstruse mysteries of the celestial scheme of which they were a part. It is not improbable that this mysterious figure, standing over the primitive altars, was made in the nature of a mannequin, and, like certain emblematic hands in the mystery schools, was covered with either carved or painted hieroglyphs. The statue may have opened, thus showing the relative positions of the organs, bones, muscles, nerves, and other parts. After ages of research, the mannequin became a mass of intricate hieroglyphs and symbolic figures. Every part had its secret meaning. The measurements formed a basic standard by means of which it was possible to measure all parts of cosmos. It was a glorious composite emblem of all the knowledge possessed by the sages and hierophants. Then came the age of idolatry. The mysteries decayed from within. The secrets were lost, and none knew the identity of the mysterious man who stood over the altar. It was remembered only that the figure was a sacred and glorious symbol of the universal power, and it finally came to be looked upon as a god, the one in whose image man was made. Having lost the knowledge of the purpose for which the mannequin was originally constructed, the priests worshipped this effigy until at last their lack of spiritual understanding brought the temple down in ruins about their heads, and the statue crumbled with the civilization that had forgotten its meaning. Proceeding from this assumption of the first theologians that man is actually fashioned in the image of God, the initiated minds of past ages erected the stupendous structure of theology upon the foundation of the human body. The religious world of today is almost totally ignorant of the fact that the science of biology is the fountainhead of its doctrines and tenets. Many of the codes and laws believed by modern divines to have been direct revelations from divinity are in reality the fruitage of ages of patient delving into the intricacies of the human constitution and the infinite wonders revealed by such a study. In nearly all the sacred books of the world can be traced an anatomical analogy. This is most evident in their creation myths. Anyone familiar with embryology and obstetrics will have no difficulty in recognizing the basis of the allegory concerning Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden, the 9 degrees of the Eleusinian mysteries, and the Brahmanic legend of Vishnu's incarnations. The story of the universal egg, the Scandinavian myth of Ginnungagap, the dark cleft in space in which the seed of the world is sown, and the use of the fish as the emblem of the paternal generative power, all show the true origin of theological speculation. The philosophers of antiquity realized that man himself was the key to the riddle of life, for he was the living image of the divine plan, and in future ages humanity also will come to realize more fully the solemn import of those ancient words. The proper study of mankind is man. Both God and man have a twofold constitution, of which the superior part is invisible and the inferior visible. In both, there is also an intermediary sphere, marking the point where these visible and invisible natures meet. As the spiritual nature of God controls his objective universal form, which is actually a crystallized idea, so the spiritual nature of man is the invisible cause and controlling power of his visible material personality. Thus, it is evident that the spirit of man bears the same relationship to his material body that God bears to the objective universe. The mysteries taught that spirit, or life, was anterior to form, and that what is anterior includes all that is posterior to itself. Spirit being anterior to form, form is therefore included within the realm of spirit. It is also a popular statement or belief that man's spirit is within his body. According to the conclusions of philosophy and theology, however, this belief is erroneous, for spirit first circumscribes an area and then manifests within it. Philosophically speaking, form, being a part of spirit, is within spirit, but spirit is more than the sum of form. As the material nature of man is therefore within the sum of spirit, so the universal nature, including the entire sidereal system, is within the all-pervading essence of God, the universal spirit. According to another concept of the ancient wisdom, all bodies, whether spiritual or material, have three centers, called by the Greeks the upper center, the middle center, and the lower center. An apparent ambiguity will here be noted. To diagram or symbolize adequately abstract mental verities is impossible, for the diagrammatic representation of one aspect of metaphysical relationships may be an actual contradiction of some other aspect. While that which is above is generally considered superior in dignity and power, in reality, that which is in the center is superior and anterior to both that which is said to be above and that which is said to be below. Therefore, it must be said that the first, which is considered as being above, is actually in the center, while both of the others, which are said to be either above or below, are actually beneath. This point can be further simplified if the reader will consider above as indicating degree of proximity to source and below as indicating degree of distance from source. Source being posited in the actual center and relative distance being the various points along the radii from the center toward the circumference. In matters pertaining to philosophy and theology, up may be considered as toward the center and down as toward the circumference. Center is spirit, circumference is matter. Therefore, up is toward spirit along an ascending scale of spirituality, down is toward matter along an ascending scale of materiality. The latter concept is partly expressed by the apex of a cone, which, when viewed from above, is seen as a point in the exact center of the circumference formed by the base of the cone. These three universal centers, the one above, the one below, and the link uniting them, represent three suns or three aspects of one sun, centers of effulgence. These also have their analogues in the three grand centers of the human body, which, like the physical universe, is a demiurgic fabrication. The first of these suns, says Thomas Taylor, is analogous to light when viewed subsisting in its fountain, the sun, the second to the light immediately proceeding from the sun, and the third to the splendor communicated to other natures by this light. Since the superior or spiritual center is in the midst of the other two, its analog in the physical body is the heart, the most spiritual and mysterious organ in the human body. The second center, or the link between the superior and inferior worlds, is elevated to the position of greatest physical dignity, the brain. The third, or lower center, is relegated to the position of least physical dignity but greatest physical importance, the generative system. Thus, the heart is symbolically the source of life, the brain the link by which, through rational intelligence, life and form are united, and the generative system, or infernal creator, the source of that power by which physical organisms are produced. The ideals and aspirations of the individual depend largely upon which of these three centers of power predominates in scope and activity of expression. In the materialist, the lower center is the strongest, in the intellectualist, the higher center, but in the initiate, the middle center, by bathing the two extremes in a flood of spiritual effulgence, controls wholesomely both the mind and the body. As light bears witness of life, which is its source, so the mind bears witness of the spirit, and activity in a still lower plane bears witness of intelligence. Thus, the mind bears witness of the heart, while the generative system, in turn, bears witness of the mind. Accordingly, the spiritual nature is most commonly symbolized by a heart, the intellectual power by an opened eye, symbolizing the pineal gland or cyclopean eye, which is the two-faced Janus of the pagan mysteries, and the generative system by a flower, a staff, a cup, or a hand. While all the mysteries recognize the heart as the center of spiritual consciousness, they often purposely ignored this concept and used the heart in its exoteric sense as the symbol of the emotional nature. In this arrangement, the generative center represented the physical body, the heart, the emotional body, and the brain, the mental body. The brain represented the superior sphere, but after the initiates had passed through the lower degrees, they were instructed that the brain was the proxy of the spiritual flame dwelling in the innermost recesses of the heart. The student of esotericism discovers ere long that the ancients often resorted to various blinds to conceal the true interpretations of their mysteries. The substitution of the brain for the heart was one of these blinds. The 3 degrees of the ancient mysteries were, with few exceptions, given in chambers which represented the 3 great centers of the human and universal bodies. If possible, the temple itself was constructed in the form of the human body. The candidate entered between the feet and received the highest degree in the point corresponding to the brain. Thus, the first degree was the material mystery, and its symbol was the generative system. It raised the candidate through the various degrees of concrete thought. The second degree was given in the chamber corresponding to the heart, but represented the middle power, which was the mental link. Here the candidate was initiated into the mysteries of abstract thought and lifted as high as the mind was capable of penetrating. He then passed into the third chamber, which, analogous to the brain, occupied the highest position in the temple, but, analogous to the heart, was of the greatest dignity. In the brain chamber, the heart mystery was given. Here the initiate for the first time truly comprehended the meaning of those immortal words. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. As there are 7 hearts in the brain, so there are 7 brains in the heart. But this is a matter of superphysics, of which little can be said at the present time. Proclus writes on this subject in the first book of On the Theology of Plato. Indeed, Socrates in the first Alcibiades rightly observes that the soul entering into herself will behold all other things and deity itself. For verging to her own union and to the center of all life, laying aside multitude and the variety of the all-manifold powers which she contains, she ascends to the highest watchtower offerings. And as in the most holy of the mysteries, they say that the mystics at first meet with the multiform and many-shaped genera which are hurled forth before the gods, but on entering the temple, unmoved, and guarded by the mystic rites, they genuinely receive in their bosom heart divine illumination, and divested of their garments, as they would say, participate of a divine nature. The same mode, as it appears to me, takes place in the speculation of wholes. For the soul, when looking at things posterior to herself, beholds the shadows and images of beings, but when she converts herself to herself, she evolves her own essence and the reasons which she contains. And at first, indeed, she only as it were beholds herself. But when she penetrates more profoundly into the knowledge of herself, she finds in herself both intellect and the orders of beings. When, however, she proceeds into her interior recesses and into the adytum, as it were, of the soul, she perceives with her eye closed, without the aid of the lower mind, the genus of the gods and the unities of beings. For all things are in us psychically, and through this we are naturally capable of knowing all things by exciting the powers and the images of wholes which we contain. The initiates of old warned their disciples that an image is not a reality, but merely the objectification of a subjective idea. The image of the gods were nor designed to be objects of worship, but were to be regarded merely as emblems or reminders of invisible powers and principles. Similarly, the body of man must not be considered as the individual, but only as the house of the individual, in the same manner that the temple was the house of God. In a state of grossness and perversion, man's body is the tomb or prison of a divine principle. In a state of unfoldment and regeneration, it is the house or sanctuary of the deity by whose creative powers it was fashioned. Personality is suspended upon a thread from the nature of being, declares the secret work. Man is essentially a permanent and immortal principle, only his bodies pass through the cycle of birth and death. The immortal is the reality, the mortal is the unreality. During each period of earth life, reality thus dwells in unreality, to be liberated from it temporarily by death and permanently by illumination. While generally regarded as polytheists, the pagans gained this reputation not because they worshipped more than one god, but rather because they personified the attributes of this god, thereby creating a pantheon of posterior deities, each manifesting a part of what the one god manifested as a whole. The various pantheons of ancient religions therefore actually represent the catalogued and personified attributes of deity. In this respect, they correspond to the hierarchies of the Hebrew Kabbalists. All the gods and goddesses of antiquity consequently have their analogies in the human body, as have also the elements, planets, and constellations which were assigned as proper vehicles for these celestials. 4 body centers are assigned to the elements, the 7 vital organs to the planets, the 12 principal parts and members to the zodiac, the invisible parts of man's divine nature to various supermundane deities, while the hidden God was declared to manifest through the marrow in the bones. It is difficult for many to realize that they are actual universes, that their physical bodies are of visible nature through the structure of which countless waves of evolving life are unfolding their latent potentialities. Yet through man's physical body, not only are a mineral, a plant, and an animal kingdom evolving, but also unknown classifications and divisions of invisible spiritual life. Just as cells are infinitesimal units in the structure of man, so man is an infinitesimal unit in the structure of the universe. A theology based upon the knowledge and appreciation of these relationships is as profoundly just as it is profoundly true. As man's physical body has 5 distinct and important extremities, 2 legs, 2 arms, and a head, of which the last governs the first 4, the number 5 has been accepted as the symbol of man. By its 4 corners, the pyramid symbolizes the arms and legs, and by its apex, the head, thus indicating that one rational power controls 4 irrational corners. The hands and feet are used to represent the 4 elements, of which the 2 feet are earth and water, and the 2 hands fire and air. The brain then symbolizes the sacred 5th element, aether, which controls and unites the other 4. If the feet are placed together and the arms outspread, man then symbolizes the cross with the rational intellect as the head or upper limb. The fingers and toes also have special significance. The toes represent the 10 commandments of the physical law, and the fingers the 10 commandments of the spiritual law. The 4 fingers of each hand represent the 4 elements, and the 3 phalanges of each finger represent the divisions of the element, so that in each hand there are 12 parts to the fingers, which are analogous to the signs of the zodiac, whereas the 2 phalanges and base of each thumb signify the threefold deity. The first phalange corresponds to the creative aspect, the second to the preservative aspect, and the base to the generative and destructive aspect. When the hands are brought together, the result is the 24 elders and the 6 days of creation. In symbolism, the body is divided vertically into halves, the right half being considered as light, and the left half as darkness. By those unacquainted with the true meanings of light and darkness, the light half was denominated spiritual and the left half material. Light is the symbol of objectivity, darkness of subjectivity. Light is a manifestation of life and is therefore posterior to life. That which is anterior to light is darkness, in which light exists temporarily, but darkness permanently. As life precedes light, its only symbol is darkness, and darkness is considered as the veil which must eternally conceal the true nature of abstract and undifferentiated being. In ancient times, men fought with their right arms and defended the vital centers with their left arms, on which was carried the protecting shield. The right half of the body was regarded therefore as offensive, and the left half defensive. For this reason also the right side of the body was considered masculine and the left side feminine. Several authorities are of the opinion that the present prevalent right-handedness of the race is the outgrowth of the custom of holding the left hand in restraint for defensive purposes. Furthermore, as the source of being is in the primal darkness which preceded light, so the spiritual nature of man is in the dark part of his being, for the heart is on the left side. Among the curious misconceptions arising from the false practice of associating darkness with evil is one by which several early nations used the right hand for all constructive labors and the left hand for only those purposes termed unclean and unfit for the sight of the gods. For the same reason, black magic was often referred to as the left-hand path, and heaven was said to be upon the right, and hell upon the left. Some philosophers further declared that there were two methods of writing, one from left to right, which was considered the exoteric method, the other from right to left, which was considered esoteric. The exoteric writing was that which was done out or away from the heart, while the esoteric writing was that which, like the ancient Hebrew, was written toward the heart. The secret doctrine declares that every part and member of the body is epitomized in the brain, and, in turn, that all that is in the brain is epitomized in the heart. In symbolism, the human head is frequently used to represent intelligence and self-knowledge. As the human body in its entirety is the most perfect known product of the Earth's evolution, it was employed to represent divinity, the highest appreciable state or condition. Artists, attempting to portray divinity, often show only a hand emerging from an impenetrable cloud. The cloud signifies the unknowable divinity concealed from man by human limitation. The hand signifies the divine activity, the only part of God which is cognizable to the lower senses. The face consists of a natural trinity, the eyes representing the spiritual power which comprehends, the nostrils representing the preservative and vivifying power, and the mouth and ears representing the material demiurgic power of the lower world. The first sphere is eternally existent and is creative. The second sphere pertains to the mystery of the creative breach, and the third sphere to the creative word. By the word of God, the material universe was fabricated, and the seven creative powers, or vowel sounds, which had been brought into existence by the speaking of the word, became the seven Elohim, or deities, by whose power and ministration the lower world was organized. Occasionally, the deity is symbolized by an eye, an ear, a nose, or a mouth. By the first, divine awareness is signified. By the second, divine interest. By the third, divine vitality. And by the fourth, divine command. The ancients did not believe that spirituality made men either righteous or rational, but rather that righteousness and rationality made men spiritual. The mysteries taught that spiritual illumination was attained only by bringing the lower nature up to a certain standard of efficiency and purity. The mysteries were therefore established for the purpose of unfolding the nature of man according to certain fixed rules, which, when faithfully followed, elevated the human consciousness to a point where it was capable of cognizing its own constitution and the true purpose of existence. This knowledge of how man's manifold constitution could be most quickly and most completely regenerated to the point of spiritual illumination constituted the secret or esoteric doctrine of antiquity. Certain apparently physical organs and centers are in reality the veils or sheaths of spiritual centers. What these were, and how they could be unfolded, was never revealed to the unregenerate, for the philosophers realized that once he understands the complete working of any system, a man may accomplish a prescribed end without being qualified to manipulate and control the effects which he has produced. For this reason, long periods of probation were imposed, so that the knowledge of how to become as the gods might remain the sole possession of the worthy. Lest that knowledge be lost, however, it was concealed in allegories and myths which were meaningless to the profane, but self-evident to those acquainted with that theory of personal redemption which was the foundation of philosophical theology. Christianity itself may be cited as an example. The entire New Testament is in fact an ingeniously concealed exposition of the secret processes of human regeneration. The characters so long considered as historical men and women are really the personification of certain processes which take place in the human body when man begins the task of consciously liberating himself from the bondage of ignorance and death. The garments and ornamentations supposedly worn by the gods are also keys, for in the mysteries, clothing was considered as synonymous with form. The degree of spirituality or materiality of the organisms was signified by the quality, beauty, and value of the garments worn. Man's physical body was looked upon as the robe of his spiritual nature. Consequently, the more developed were his supersubstantial powers, the more glorious his apparel. Of course, clothing was originally worn for ornamentation rather than protection, and such practice still prevails among many primitive peoples. The mysteries caught that man's only lasting adornments were his virtues and worthy characteristics, that he was clothed in his own accomplishments and adorned by his attainments. Thus, the white robe was symbolic of purity, the red robe of sacrifice and love, and the blue robe of altruism and integrity. Since the body was said to be the robe of the spirit, mental or moral deformities were depicted as deformities of the body. Considering man's body as the measuring rule of the universe, the philosophers declared that all things resemble in constitution, if not in form, the human body. The Greeks, for example, declared Delphi to be the navel of the earth, for the physical planet was looked upon as a gigantic human being twisted into the form of a ball. In contradistinction to the belief of Christendom that the earth is an inanimate thing, the pagans considered not only the earth but also all the sidereal bodies as individual creatures possessing individual intelligences. They even went so far as to view the various kingdoms of nature as individual entities. The animal kingdom, for example, was looked upon as one being, a composite of all the creatures composing that kingdom. This prototypic beast was a mosaic embodiment of all animal propensities, and within its nature, the entire animal world existed as the human species exists within the constitution of the prototypic atom. In the same manner, races, nations, tribes, religions, states, communities, and cities were viewed as composite entities, each made up of varying numbers of individual units. Every community has an individuality, which is the sum of the individual attitudes of its inhabitants. Every religion is an individual whose body is made up of a hierarchy and vast host of individual worshippers. The organization of any religion represents its physical body and its individual members, the cell life, making up this organism. Accordingly, religions, races, and communities, like individuals, pass through Shakespeare's 7 ages, for the life of man is a standard by which the perpetuity of all things is estimated. According to the secret doctrine, man, through the gradual refinement of his vehicles and the ever-increasing sensitiveness resulting from that refinement, is gradually overcoming the limitations of matter and is disentangling himself from his mortal coil. When humanity has completed its physical evolution, the empty shell of materiality left behind will be used by other life waves as stepping stones to their own liberation. The trend of man's evolutionary growth is ever toward his own essential selfhood. At the point of deepest materialism, therefore, man is at the greatest distance from himself. According to the mystery teachings, not all the spiritual nature of man incarnates in matter. The spirit of man is diagrammatically shown as an equilateral triangle with one point downward. This lower point, which is 1/3 of the spiritual nature, but in comparison to the dignity of the other two, is much less than 1/3, descends into the illusion of material existence for a brief space of time. That which never clothes itself in the sheath of matter is the Hermetic anthropos, the overman, analogous to the Cyclops or guardian daemon of the Greeks, the angel of Jacob Boehme, and the oversoul of Emerson. That unity, that oversoul, within which every man's particular being is contained and made one with all other. At birth, only a third part of the divine nature of man temporarily dissociates itself from its own immortality and takes upon itself the dream of physical birth and existence, animating with its own celestial enthusiasm a vehicle composed of material elements, part of and bound to the material sphere. At death, this incarnated part awakens from the dream of physical existence and reunites itself once more with its eternal condition. This periodical descent of spirit into matter is termed the wheel of life and death, and the principles involved are treated at length by the philosophers under the subject of metempsychosis. By initiation into the mysteries and a certain process known as operative theology, this law of birth and death is transcended, and during the course of physical existence, that part of the spirit which is asleep in form is awakened without the intervention of death, the inevitable initiator, and is consciously reunited with the anthropos, or the overshadowing substance of itself. This is at once the primary purpose and the consummate achievement of the mysteries, that man shall become aware of and consciously be reunited with the divine source of himself without tasting of physical dissolution.